Hey guys, Nike here. The recent balance patch was mostly PvP centered, but there were a few PvE changes in there, and one of the pleasant surprises was the emergence of a DPS Spellbreaker build that seemingly answered the prayers of a lot of warrior players. Bladesworn has undeniably good damage, but it can be tricky to play, and isn't good on a lot of bosses due to the boss mechanics. Power Berserker was already a mess, and unfortunately this patch made it take a step further backwards away from playability. So Warrior was missing a good DPS option that was relatively easy to play and useful in every scenario. And we got it in Spellbreaker. The DPS Spellbreaker build combines very strong burst with decent sustained damage, and all in a rather easy to learn DPS rotation. This is a build you can play on a ton of bosses where Bladesworn would either be inconvenient or Condi Berserker would be inappropriate. It's easy to recommend to players who don't play Warrior and are looking for a new build to learn, or longtime Warrior players who are jonesing for a Warrior build that feels a bit more similar to how Warrior felt in vanilla Guild Wars 2. If that interests you guys at all, stick around and let's go over the build together. Alright guys, let's talk about the gear. For this build, it's super simple. We're going to use full Berserker with Runes of the Scholar, the classic setup. And for weapons, we're going to use Greatsword and Dagger Axe, each with Sigil of Force and Sigil of Accuracy. If you care about infusions, the optimal setup is 17 power infusions and 1 precision infusion. The reason for the 1 precision infusion is that there are some situations where you'll have 5 stacks of Attacker's Insight and activate your Signet of Fury, and this 1 precision infusion will let you crit cap in that scenario. If you don't want to bother with it, that's fine. It's a tiny minuscule difference, and there is a very good chance you still won't fail to crit even without the infusion. But if you are full min-maxing, this is what you want to do. You may notice that the build does not crit cap by default with the gear set up. Before anyone asks, the reason for this is that we will maintain 2 stacks of Attacker's Insight minimally, and we'll spike up to 5 at times, which ensures we will always hit 100% crit chance. It's important to be aware that we are assuming 2 stacks of Attacker's Insight in our crit chance calculation. For food, of course, you want to use the best in-slot ascended food like sous vide steaks. If you're on a budget, you can use a bowl of sweet and spicy curry butternut squash soup. For our utility, I would recommend Writ of Masterful Strength. And if you're on a budget, the potent Superior Sharpening Stones are the next best choice. For traits, we take Strength, Tactics, and Spellbreaker. In Strength, we're going for the tried and true typical setup of Peak Performance, Great Fortitude, and Berserker's Power. Not much here to talk about. If you've played Warrior any time at any moment for the last half decade, pretty much just straight DPS increases. In Tactics, we're going to take Leg Specialist, Warrior's Cunning, and Martial Cadence. Between Leg Specialist, Warrior's Cunning, and Empowered, there are a lot of damage mods here. Our GM trait choices are largely irrelevant, and you can pick any of the 3 that you want, but I recommend Martial's Cadence because it will help your group quickness cap, and if you're playing in a shaky pug, it could be the difference between quickness capping and not quickness capping. That said, I do suspect in the November 2022 patch that Martial Cadence is likely going to get nerfed because of some interactions it has when you stack too many Bladesworns together in a group. And the end result of that will be, it's entirely possible that there will be a new GM trait that is better that we will take, or it is entirely possible that we just take one of the others because Martial Cadence is just really not worth using. Or in typical ANET fashion, the entire trait line of Tactics could get nerfed, and I'll have to make a new build video. We won't know. In Spellbreaker, we take Pure Strike, Sun and Moon Style, and Magebane Tether. These traits are mostly just damage increases, but remember that in a desperate moment, you can break your Mage Brain tether for CC if needed. Attacker's Insight is a key trait in the Spellbreaker line. If you follow the rotation guide in this video, you don't really have to think about it, but you should be aware, of course, that more stacks of Attacker's Insight is better. If you are in a situation where you can proc your full counter, especially around multiple enemies, you will immediately go up to 5 stacks of Insight and get a very nice damage boost. The rotation of the build is very simple at baseline, but a skilled and experienced player will be really rewarded for a smart use of full counter and getting a lot of extra damage from that. For our skills, we are going to take Mending, Bull's Charge, Signet of Fury, Signet of Might, and Winds of Disenchantment. For Mending, it's here because it can proc peak performance and should be used in places where the boss is invulnerable and is about to come back from being invulnerable, and you can basically activate it without losing any damage, and you get that peak performance buff. That's usually the best case time. You're not going to use it as part of your rotation or anything like that, but yeah, it's fine. If you feel like you really want to swap it out for Healing Signet or To the Limit, go ahead, be my guest. Signet of Fury helps us crit cap, and additionally, it is activated for a little bit of extra burst damage in conjunction with Winds of Disenchantment. Winds of Disenchantment, when you use it, will strip 5 boons from your target, which means you will get 5 stacks of Attacker's Insight, which means that the 180 precision that you lose from activating Signet of Fury for the 16 seconds that it's on cooldown will not be a problem for you, and you will still crit cap. And then Bull's Charge is here as part of our rotation to proc peak performance, and in a pinch, it can fulfill the CC role. Signet of Might is just a boring DPS increase for the build, but a welcome one. One weakness the build has is that it is relatively weak for CC. So in a fight like Sloth or Samurog, where you really need to hard carry with your CC, I encourage you to swap out Signet of Might for another CC utility like Kick or Stomp. So for the rotation, first I'm going to play the rotation in slow motion and describe the opener and then the looping part of the rotation. It's rather easy to learn, so with a little practice following this guide, you'll have it in no time. Once you know the looping part of the rotation, you essentially can repeat it infinitely and pump out that DPS. After the slow-mo playthrough, I will let the rotation play through in real speed so you can see it in action. Okay, so we're going to lead with our opener, which is Mending, Winds of Disenchantment, and then we will go into Bull's Charge, Signet of Fury. And you do want to start on your Greatsword. You're going to use Arc Slice and Greatsword 4, and then you will swap to Axe Dagger. You will use Axe 4, Dagger 3, Dagger Burst, Dagger 2, and then Axe 5. After Axe 5, you are going to auto attack and keep autoing until your Dagger Burst is available again. Once your Dagger Burst is available again, you use it, and then you use Dagger 2 again, and then Dagger 4, or Axe 4, and Dagger 3, and then after the Dagger 3, we swap to Greatsword, do a Greatsword Burst, and then we will do 100 Blades. After 100 Blades, we are going to use Greatsword 3, and then Greatsword 5 to get back into position. We're going to auto attack, and this is the trickiest part. You want to auto attack until you have about 1.8 seconds left on your weapon swap, and then you are going to Bull's Charge, Greatsword Burst, and then Greatsword 4, and then after the Greatsword 4, we swap, and we repeat the same exact dagger axe rotation as the previous time. And this is the loop. You will repeat this exact exchange between the greatsword and the dagger axe every single time. And that is essentially how it goes. And you can see it will repeat endlessly. And for the most part, in every real raid fight, you will do it exactly like this. When you're in a very long fight, you may come up upon a time where your Winds of Disenchantment comes off cooldown. In a situation where Winds of Disenchantment does come off cooldown, what you would want to do at that point is, once you're back on your Greatsword set, instead of doing those auto attacks on Greatsword while waiting for the weapon swap cooldown to hit 1.8 seconds, you will use Winds of Disenchantment and activate your Signet of Fury again, and then you'll do your Greatsword Burst and the Greatsword 4, and it will be exactly like doing your opener again. On the Golem, you get to do this so you get a nice little damage boost at the end of your Golem to make your Golem number look pretty. However, in an actual raid fight, it will also serve to give you a nice little burst of damage in the last few percent. However, not every raid fight is long enough for this to matter, but it is something to consider. However, if you're just learning the build, I would say 99.9% of the time, as long as you focus on learning the looping part of this rotation, you'll be really good to go. Alright guys, so that's it for the slow-mo breakdown. Let's go in to the fast playthrough. So that's the build, guys. I really enjoy this build and I like playing it, and it's a lot of fun with a very classic Guild Wars 2 warrior vibe. We aren't a weeb gunblade, we aren't a raging berserker weirdo, we are just a classic MMO warrior that does big damage. I encourage you guys to give this one a try and let me know how you like it in the comments below. I'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.